There it is.
Boom! There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Friday Fashion Business Bros.
Friday,
Yeah,
what?
It's the Friday version, dude. It's the Friday version. All right, drop the
cool.
fire. Drop the fire.
Drop the fire. All right, all you business pros out there. Before we jump into the show, just a quick reminder to please subscribe on whichever platform it is that you're listening to us on today. Give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, and drop a review and help other like-minded business owners find value from our awesome guests as we rise up in the podcast rankings. We will really appreciate it. And if you want to be a guest on the show, we'd love to have you on and learn from you too. Go to www.businessbros.biz/podcast guest and schedule your time slot. And don't forget to follow us on all our social media at Business Bros Pod. All right, here we go. We are so excited and so honored to bring yet another incredible guest on the Business Bros Pod. Our guest today is a world-class author, editor, nerdy data scientist, and mompreneur who's taking homeschooling by storm. She has spent countless hours of research and design to build a modern and secular language arts curriculum for kids. With over 350 hours of instruction, her program is designed on a 4-day teaching week that makes it easy for you parents, and lessons are broken down to just 20-minute blocks that makes it easy for you parents, making the content super palatable for both parents and young learners alike. What really makes this program unique is the emphasis on real and practical communication skills. Each lesson and activity is designed to help foster a skill within your child that will help them understand the people around them and to make themselves understood. We're excited to learn, and I just hope that I don't say anything too grammatically incorrect. Coming to us today from across the pond in Berlin, Germany, and joining us from the Storyweavers, welcome to the show, Olivia Derby.
Shut up and sit down.
The Business Bros Podcast was created for you. Learn from the business professionals who come to share their stories. Find out what's working in business, on social media, what's hot and what's not, straight from the mouths of successful entrepreneurs out there doing the real work. And now, welcome to another episode of
Business Bros. Yeah, Olivia, we're pumped. I know it's 1:00 in the morning out there, so we want to give you a big round of applause for getting up so early to be on the show. Thank you very much.
Of course, I'm super happy to be here, and thank you guys so much for having me.
All right. Well, I want to get to know from one educator to another. How'd you get into the whole education space?
So I never expected to start doing what I was doing here. I'm actually a marketer by trade. I spent my life doing data science and digital advertising and social media development. And when I had my son, I became an author. And I just really, it was not part of my life plan. But what
life always throws hiccups, right? Life throws curveballs all the time.
It really does. And I kind of just the right things came together, the right moments, and I met my business partner Geraldine, and we both come from very corporate backgrounds, very communication focused. And about 2 years ago, we got together and decided that we wanted to rebuild how our kids were learning to communicate, because we saw so many of our own the things that we teach other people to do differently in their own communication. We saw that our kids were kind of struggling with that. So we put together this really cool program that deals with amazing topics like debate and like truth and misdirection and expressing displeasure with children, but also giving them the same strategies that adults can bring into their lives, so that they can kind of communicate with each other more effectively and understand the world around them more clearly and sort of answer those questions that we're all dealing with right now. So we built this, especially with the election and everything. So we built this curriculum around these clear communication points that kids struggle with, but then adults also get to learn right alongside their kids.
So you have this background in marketing and now you're teaching people to communicate in a certain way. When you were describing it right now, I was thinking of like the dark side of the force. Like all of a sudden
That's exactly what it
you
is.
can use these skills for good or evil, depends on what you want to do. And the way you described it, you're like, look, son, daughter, children, let me show you the light. This is the proper way to communicate. I mean, we have a lot of kids right now stuck in front of a screen and not by choice anymore, right? Yes, they want to be on Snapchat, Instagram, all those types of things, TikTok all day long, right? But on top of that, now we got them there for school. They're not really communicating with each other, and the way they're communicating is a little bit different. How's your program helping to kind of, I guess, navigate those waters?
So this is one of my favorite questions because so what the Storyweavers is doing right now, we have pods that we've set up where you can join a group of 4 to 6 other kids. You can meet once a week. You can get a chance to like try out some of these communication like hacks with other kids. And it spans the age range. We have like first graders all the way up to like 7th grade. But the kids actually get to try this stuff with each other. And it's really cool because every module that we work on and everything that we do with the kids is like it's not just limited to the kids. As parents, we learn with them. And it's so interesting because we really can bring that to our whole lives. And just to give you an example, one of our most recent modules that we were working on is about how to use interruptions in speech to your advantage. Because most kids and even most adults are kind of taught that interrupting is really bad. You shouldn't do that. Well, the mark of like a great presenter is someone who has mastered that skill, someone who's able to kind of look at a situation and use interruptions to clarify speech and to bring the conversation back to where they want it to go and reinforce really strong listening and presenting skills. So this is just one example. We have a module on truth and misdirection and how media might mislead you and how you can kind of use that to your advantage or disadvantage.
Right, that's 2 already that are
cool
interesting for me. So let's start with the interrupting one. I mean, literally, I just interrupted you, anyways. But how as a podcast host, irony, right? As a podcast host, there's a point in the conversation where sometimes myself, for example, I could be a rambler. I can keep going on a conversation, and the guest might not feel the capability.
He ain't lying.
Thanks. Right, the ability to interrupt, right? But on the other side is sometimes I get guests on the show, and I think what they're saying is interesting, but I feel like there's certain times when I should interrupt, kind of maybe steer the direction of the conversation back or something like that. How do I know when is the right time to interrupt somebody, and how do I go about doing that in an effective way?
I have an idea here that I think could help, but really, it's about using like key phrases and very simple strategies like interjecting, "Oh, that's a great idea. Do you think we can circle back to that?" Or I have an awesome, I have something that I think we could build on. So giving the other person a little bit of reassurance and like validation, and then sneaking in your message. The way that you do it and the way that we talk about body language in the class. We talk about how you say things, and all of these sort of come together at the end of every module to create a really strong skill. And the kids really take it to a totally different area. So I'm always surprised. Like I always do these, I get onto the pods, with the kids, and I'm working with all the families and everything. And I'm always surprised, like, I expect to go one way and the kids have taken it somewhere else because they learn from people around them and they share their own experiences, and they, like, as parents, we're contributing to what they understand about communication. So everyone kind of has something new and unique to bring to the table, which is a really cool environment. We all learn from each other, and especially about this topic, it's a really great skill to exercise.
It's so funny. Growing up, we 3 boys growing up, and mom and dad. And I always found it funny when my dad would always try to teach us chess, right? And we would be playing chess, and then he stopped playing with us the moment we could beat him, right? It was one of those competitive things. And when you're describing some of these characteristics, like you're teaching the kids some great communication skills, but they can easily use those skills to manipulate you, right? I mean, how often are you?
Fine by me.
How often do you find yourself with your own kid realizing after you've been played or after you've been kind of coerced into a situation that you're almost upset that they did it, but at the same time you're proud that they kind of use some of these tools?
So we finished this module on debate, on teaching the kids how to argue, and on one hand I'm like, I'm so proud of you. You're going to be so successful. On the other hand, I'm like, no.
So you just finished the module on debate. Perfect timing. We just had, an election, but prior to that, we had 2 debates, and one of them was not the example that you want to have when having a debate. It was honestly.
I'm sorry. I took it too far.
Yeah, exactly. It was bad. It was bad. Did you use that as kind of one of those, like, here's what not to do?
So we try not to make it too political, because the kids tend to lose interest, and it's really about them. But we have a lot of material that makes it very easy to, like, the election has really given us a lot to work with. But what's really cool, though, is that parents and families and kids can see this stuff in action every day. Like, you turn on the TV, you see an advertisement, and you learn, oh, that's like, they're selling me. They're using language to make me feel a certain way. Or they see anything that happens in the news. They see headlines. They learn how to deal with exaggeration in headlines, and why that might be advantageous to a media organization. And as they see it, they realize, oh, like, that's a strategy and I can use that. But more than learning how to use it, they learn how to recognize it and what to do. Like, they learn how to recognize when a debate is going horribly wrong, and maybe how you shouldn't treat
other people,
forum. And other people.
But you're giving them a valuable perspective, right? The perspective that they have now, they're looking at things from a different point of view. Like, growing up, you get, I don't know, as I was a kid, we would watch cartoons from a certain point to a certain point, and every single commercial in that time segment was designed to get me to go to my mom and dad and say, I want this, right? I'm being sold something. As I grown up now, and I look at things more from a marketing perspective, I start to point out certain things like, oh, that was good. I can pull that. I can use that. For your kids to be able to look at the overall media strategy, especially in a day and age when they're being bombarded by, thousands and thousands of ads every single day, to pull pieces of all those things being thrown at them and kind of almost, throw them back, like ricochet them back. That is very, very impressive. Why do it in Germany?
So I'm an American. So I'm deeply familiar with the whole media structure in the States. I'm an American. I worked in digital media. I learned all the secrets of how to manipulate buyers into, feeling one way or buying one thing or responding in one way. And at the same time, I learned, that's happening to me. What I'm doing, what I'm learning here and what I'm using in my work is also being directed at me. And when you realize that, it doesn't feel great. Like, if you don't
played
consciously, if you're not consciously aware of what's happening, it doesn't feel great. But when I moved to Europe, I saw this from like a third party perspective. I got to kind of like look at my culture and my work from a distance. And that gave me a lot of pause, really, to think about what it is that I'm doing and why we're doing it, and the power that you have as media. as a media outlet. And that moment of clarity really played a lot in this. Like it helped me want to bring more to my kids and to let more people have that power of understanding.
Well, let me ask you about that power of understanding, because our show is very much we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, right, who are stuck. They're trying to grow their book of business. They're trying to get more business. They just don't quite have the tools or the communication skills maybe to create compelling ads that bring them the leads that they're looking for, to create the content that they're looking for, to attract the people that they want into their business. So you've spent that time learning a lot of these tricks of the trade. Now you're teaching children to kind of see this stuff. What about, what about that entrepreneur who wants to take that to the next level? What kinds of things should they be looking at in their content or in their messaging and their marketing to help them, I guess, I don't want to say manipulate, but to get people to come their way in an ethical way?
Influence.
Yes. Influence.
Yeah. So the biggest thing that you can do for your brand and for any brand, and especially as a consumer, you need to be on the lookout for this all the time. But the biggest thing that you can do is to put yourself in your audience's shoes and really think about how they are receiving your message, because it's always, communication is always talked about as a two-way street. And on one hand, it is, but more important than what you say is how you're being received. So if you say something, really, really excited and you're really in love with your product, you might be over the moon about it, but it may not be received with that same energy from the other side. So continually try your messaging out, test it out, have a look at how people are responding to you, like watch their face, pitch your services, pitch your messaging to somebody and look at their face and see, are they paying attention? Have they lost interest? Is there a particular piece of my message that I've talked about that they like hooked onto that maybe I'm not as excited about? So it's really, really important to come at it from your audience perspective. And then once you have that, once you know what your audience is piqued by, what they're like captured with, you need to create a story around it, a really good, compelling story. And everybody can tell you, oh, I don't have the skills, or I'm not an author, or whatever. You can come up with all the excuses, but in reality, you are so unique. Like whoever you are, whatever you're working on, you're special because you've been able to take the leap to do that. And that story is going to set you up with a differentiator, something that's going to make you stand out from the crowd and make you relatable. So think about your message from your audience's perspective, and then come up with a story that's real, that's honest, that's like comes from your background, and weave that into your message and make that your brand. You need to live the story and live your brand and be unique based on your story. Don't try and like copy some other, whoever's in the space. Don't try and like copy and paste a brand. You need to talk about your message from your actual real life perspective. And even if you're telling me like, oh, I don't have any story, I don't have a story, that's just not true. You have to dig deeper and find it.
So James and I spend a lot of time, every Sunday, actually, we spend a lot of time developing what our message is going to be for the week. And what we do is we start off with an emotion. We start thinking about our ideal client, and we pick something that they feel at a certain point in their life, right? What are they going through right now? What is it, at what point in this entrepreneurial journey are our ideal clients sitting in right now? And what are they feeling at that point? And then once we have that feeling, then we kind of go back and we think about what have we gone through in that similar situation. And then we decide, okay, like for example, this week we talked about the time we lost our $3 million book of business, and we told that story about losing that appointment with the insurance company, and how it was detrimental to our business, and how we had to stop, and how and all of it is to sell the system that we're operating in. So the story that you're talking about, when you weave it, the way we've tried to do that is to have a product in mind on the one end, right? But on the other end is to try to sell that product through an emotion. Am I on the right track there, trying to make those things work together when I'm coming up with a story?
Absolutely. But I think the biggest key point that you touched on was that moment of vulnerability. Like, you shared the fact that you didn't have all the answers, that
Yeah.
you're, you know, inherently human, flawed in some way. And when you do that, when you expose that little moment of vulnerability, you become very relatable. And as opposed to the big brands that you see on TV and like the really in your face sales strategies, that vulnerability helps people connect with you, and it develops trust, and it develops it really helps you manage your expectations of the customers that you have. So that is so important whenever you're telling a story, having that, like, I mean, if you look at the typical arc of, piece of fiction or any good book, you have the same kind of ups and downs. You have you're moving up to your problem, and then you have a major conflict point, and then you can come back to your conclusion. But you have to have that is your story, that like up and down, the like flow of the wave. That is the story that people connect to. And when they have that emotional, like, boundary that you've given them, that they can kind of grab onto and say, like, that person is relatable. That person is like, I feel seen. That's when they are willing to not only work with you, but hear you out and kind of like address you as an expert on a topic, or listen to your ideas in a way that's, more than just superficial.
So you said earlier that everybody has a story, right? And that's absolutely true. I 100% agree with you. I mean, I'm 38 years old. If I don't have a story, what have I been doing for 38 years, right?
Exactly.
But
and I don't care if you're 18 years old, you have a story.
Yeah. But getting to that story is a hard part, right? People tend to never even scrape the surface into what kind of history they have or what kind of story they should tell. Do you have any strategies or tips to help people dig that a little bit deeper to find the story that may connect with others?
Yeah. Failure. That is the biggest topic I have. So,
hence our $3 million loss.
Right? Exactly. If it hurt when it was happening, then it's probably
it hurt. It hurt.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. So when you have that moment of failure, you've been challenged, and that's when the story gets good, right? Nobody wants to read a book. Nobody wants to hear, nobody wants to see a movie about just positivity the whole way up.
Exactly.
They want to see that struggle, because everybody has some moment of that in their life. So find that moment where you were at, like, this hurt. I felt bad. So if you can look at yourself, you can look at your, like, timeline of your life and say, I would be kind of embarrassed to tell anybody about this. That is the story. You can pinpoint that one thing in your life that's like, I did not do that. That did not happen. That's the story that you need to tell.
Well, then in that case, we got a crap load of stories, because I've been embarrassed so many times. It's ridiculous. And I know James is in the same boat. He's thinking to himself, oh man, what kind of stupid crap did I do as a kid?
Oh, plenty.
We got a list of stuff. Or, I mean, as a kid, as an adult, what stupid stuff I did yesterday, for that matter. But yeah, I mean, but you're right. Those are the things that attract the greatest attention. But how do I guess break through that barrier of being able to be vulnerable? Because I think that's the other side, right? Okay, hard. So I find the story. I know, okay, this would be a very interesting story, and then I grab my phone, or I'm gonna record my piece of content, whatever it's gonna be, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. How do we push through those little fears, that persecution or that judgment that we think is on the other side, that often isn't really there? It's more self-inflicted.
So we deal with this topic a little bit with our kids as well. In the program, But we give you a framework, right, to deal with this kind of stuff. And the basic framework is when you know you have that story to tell, when you know you have an opinion to share, or you need to make your voice heard. The first thing that you do when you're uncomfortable is validate your fears. You can validate it publicly. You can be like, look, I was very nervous to come onto this podcast today, but I am here and I did it. I showed up, and now we're going to talk about my opinion. So start by validating that fear, because the moment that you do, it's going to be easier to talk. It's going to, you get your mouth open and the words just come out. And then at the same time, your audience has immediately connected to you. They said, I've also felt uncomfortable. I've also had times where I was not totally comfortable with myself. So validate that fear, start talking, and then you can share your opinion. It's always easier.
That is phenomenal advice, because that's one of those things. I use something like that when I don't want to get up in the morning. So for you, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. So for me, I'd be getting up in about 3 hours. I get up about 4:20 every morning, and I don't like to get up when the alarm goes off. But I tell myself what you just said. Where you acknowledge that, I tell myself the same thing. You're tired, but once you start working, you're going to feel better. Once you start doing your push-ups, you're going to feel better. Once you finish your run, you're going to have that energy. I acknowledge that to myself. And today is going to be a good day. Like I literally say those things to myself in my mind to get myself just to sit up in bed. And then,
this is the
get
power of words. That's the power of influence. You're influencing yourself.
Yeah, hands down. And I mean, again, congratulations to you for getting up and being on the show at 1 a.m. That's crazy. I mean, not very many people do that sort of stuff, but having that consistent factor of doing things on a regular basis and saying that, as uncomfortable as I am, I'm going to keep doing that. In your experience, does that get easier over time?
It definitely gets easier over time. And when I think as adults, we struggle so often because we weren't, at least I wasn't. Nobody taught me how to deal with my insecurities. Nobody taught me how to talk to other people. I'm an introvert, extreme introvert.
Same.
But
it doesn't seem that way, but I am.
Right? Because you've learned, it's taken you, you're 38 years old. It's taken you your whole life. And now you've kind of learned a few tricks and tips and, matched a few patterns up here and there. And you've kind of assembled this patchwork of things to do when you're feeling, insecure, triggered, uncomfortable, etc. And think about how much further you would have been where you are now, than where you are now, if you'd had somebody who came up to you and said, look, I have a framework for dealing with all of these issues. You're going to have to make it your own at some point, but here's a starting point. Here's a place to begin. You would have, at least, speaking from experience, I feel like I would have had way easier road.
Yeah, I agree. Some of these tools that they're, and as an educator, I always talk about that. I'm like, look, there's so many things in high school that we learn that we're never going to use. Things like this, knowing how to communicate. Valuable tool, invaluable. I mean, you can take that skill in any industry, go find a job because you can communicate better than everybody else at the interview. Excel at your job because you can communicate in sales. You can manage people because you know how to communicate with people and get your point across.
Listen to them because you know how to take their concerns into account because you know how to deal with the management piece. If you have the ability to sell and tell a story, you can connect with people, you can sell yourself, you can sell your company, you can sell your ideas. You have more opportunities than any other single skill set.
And that's why we
fight me on it.
No, that's absolutely.
Nope,
I agree with you
100%. Yep.
I agree with you. I mean, think about I'm thinking in human history, the most valuable people in human tribes as we're growing are historians, are the people who could tell the story at the end of the day. Sitting around a campfire, who's the one talking? Who's the one telling the stories? Who's the one reminiscing? That's where the attention is being focused.
Power that person has.
Absolutely. They're influencing everything that happens. History is written by the people who are recording it and telling the story. So anything that happened in the past, who knows if it's true or not, because the perspective that we're hearing it is from the best storyteller.
Exactly. And if you have that skill and you've started honing it and mastering it as, as a child, when you're able to develop new skills very easily and you've maintained it throughout your entire life, you are in a better position than you could have been in any other scenario.
I totally agree. Olivia, before we're running out of time here, before we get done and I can let you go back to sleep, can you tell our audience, or especially our listening audience, how can they get a hold of you if they want to, get maybe send their kids to be part of your program, get in some of those pods?
So our digital pods are open. We're making an effort to make as many available for kids who are now at home because of the current situation. And if you're interested or want to just talk or have some great ideas that you'd like to share, we always like to talk. You can go to www.thestory-weavers.com, or you can drop us an email, follow us on Instagram. We would love to hear from anybody who's dealing with maybe recently homeschooling or starting with their kids at home. We are all about providing a community and support for that.
Awesome. Last little thing. What does the future hold for you now that you've developed this? You've left the marketing world. You're helping kids. What does the future look like for you?
So the future for us is making as big of an impact and helping as many parents through the pandemic, through starting like a whole new normal with their kids in schooling, and changing the way that language arts is taught all over the world.
I love that. I mean, again, we have shifted. We're being exposed to so much nonstop every single day. With every single clip that we see, we're consuming the world 15 seconds at a time these days. If we can take a different perspective on things, kind of step back, have an idea of what's true, what's not true, how do I relate, what are they trying to make me do, why did I watch that? If we can answer those questions.
Why did I watch that?
Yeah.
That's the question.
if we can answer those amongst ourselves, I mean, we're taking a step in the right direction. So, Olivia, thank you for taking the time to be on the show. I appreciate you taking the 1 o'clock in the morning spot over there in Berlin.
Thank you so much. It was so fun to have you to be on the show, guys.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gents, that's the end of our Friday episode. Make sure you guys follow us at Business Bros Pod. Give us a subscribe, rate, review. Let us know what you think of the show. And make sure you guys check out Olivia. I don't know where'd her stuff go, James. Where'd her stuff? There you go. Make sure you follow her at @thestory_weavers on Instagram, or go to the website, thestory-weavers.com. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peace.
Bye-bye.
And we're out.
Thank you for listening to the Business Bros Podcast. Are you looking to get more clients or to increase your income? Hernan, the business bro, can help you generate referrals through the power of podcasting. And James, the insurance bro with Pipeline Insurance, can help you effectively add insurance to your existing business. If you are ready to create wealth today and generational wealth for tomorrow, email businessbros@csfirst.com to schedule a free consultation, or join the Business Bros Network, www.businessbros.biz.